Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing in the blue-black hour before dawn, where a medieval castle rises ahead of you like a mountain that learned how to frown. Cold stone sweats beneath the torchlight, damp straw clings to the soles of your boots. Smoke sleeps in the rafters of the gatehouse, horse breath ghosts through the winter air, and somewhere beyond the curtain wall, a bell gives one slow, tired note, as if even the monastery regrets being awake. River mist curls along the ditch. Mud grips your ankles, and the guards above you look down with a warm welcome of men who have not had enough ale or sleep. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You pull your cloak tighter, though it smells strongly of wet wool and last night's fire, and you remember, gently and honestly, that you probably would not last a week out here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, down in the comments, where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The castle does not wake all at once. It stirs in pieces, like a heavy sleeper under wool blankets, one limb at a time. First comes the soft scrape of a boot above the gate, then the cough of a guard who has spent too many hours tasting smoke, then the creak of timber as a small shutter opens beside the great oak doors, and a porter peers out through a square gap barred with iron. His cap is pulled low, his beard is beaded with mist, and his eyes have the careful suspicion of a man whose whole occupation is deciding whether strangers are trouble before breakfast. You stand with a few others in the road, all of you waiting beneath the arch while the sky slowly pales behind the towers. A muleteer shifts from foot to foot, his baskets covered with sacking. A boy with a sealed message tucked inside his tunic keeps one hand pressed to his chest, as though the parchment might fly away if offended. Two women from a nearby village wait with bundles of eggs wrapped in straw, and one old pilgrim leans on a staff decorated with little badges from shrines so far away that no one here can quite agree whether he truly walked to them or simply bought the proofs from a very persuasive merchant. The porter asks names, business, and who will answer if any of you bring sickness, theft, or inconvenient relatives through the gate. His voice is low but not unkind. This is his hour, before the Lord's servants rush, before the kitchens roar, before the chapel bell gathers everyone into the day. The porter's work is strange only because it is so ordinary he keeps the world from spilling into the castle too quickly. One wrong cart, one loose animal, one angry creditor. One barrel of sour ale sold as good, and the whole morning becomes everyone's problem. Castles are built of stone, yes, but they're also built of habits, and men like him are the mortar. Above you, the guards stamp their feet on the wall-walk. Their spears lean nearby, their cloaks are fur-lined at the collars, and their hands are red with cold. One mutters a charm against frostbite, rubbing his fingers with goose grease and murmuring the name of a local saint who, according to some, once kept a shepherd warm through an entire snowstorm. No one can quite agree whether the shepherd survived because of the saint, the grease, or because the tale improves every winter in the telling. Still, the guard rubs carefully, and you do not blame him. Belief is another kind of blanket when the wind comes over the fields. The gatehouse smells of old rain, iron, damp rope, and banked ash. When the wicket door opens, you duck through one at a time, stooping beneath the thick frame. The oak is studded with black iron bosses, each one slick with dew, and the hinges are large enough to look like they could fasten a church to the earth. Inside, the passage narrows. The stones hold the night's cold so deeply that your breath clouds before your face. Somewhere nearby, a sleepy dog lifts its head, considers you, and decides you're not interesting enough to stand for. This is perhaps the finest compliment you will receive before noon. A second porter sits on a stool beside a small brazier, feeding it twigs with the seriousness of a monk illuminating scripture. A tally stick rests across his knees. Beside him hangs a bundle of iron keys, though not the grand keys of the inner castle. only the smaller ones for store hatches, side doors, and gatehouse chests. Already. The day has begun to gather in objects: a horn lantern with a cracked pane, a basket of rushes swept from yesterday's passage, a jug of thin ale, a heel of coarse bread, a wax tablet smudged with names, and a rag for wiping mud from the threshold. Nothing here is noble, yet everything matters. The messenger boy is brought forward first. His sealed strip of parchment bears a lump of red wax pressed with a mark that looks impressive to anyone not trained to notice how often impressive marks are used by people in a hurry. The porter squints at it, turns it toward the brazier light, and sniffs as though treason might have a smell. Those who tell the tale never fully agree on whether castle porters could recognize every lord's seal by sight, but this one has the air of a man who recognizes enough to be dangerous. He waves the boy inward, telling him to wait by the lower stair until a household clerk is awake enough to pretend patience. The muleteer must argue longer. His baskets hold onions, smoked fish, and 2 small wheels of cheese wrapped in linen. The porter pokes one wheel with a thumb, not because he knows cheese deeply, you suspect, but because poking things gives officials confidence. A kitchen servant appears from within the yard, hair escaping her cap, cheeks flushed from the first fires. She takes one look at the fish and declares it acceptable in the tone of someone forgiving a personal insult. The muleteer is allowed through after promising that if any basket proves light, wormy, or blessed with too much imagination, he will answer for it at the buttery door. Slowly. The castle yard opens before you. The dawn is still thin, but movement begins everywhere. A groom crosses the mud carrying a bucket that steams in the cold. A boy scatters sand near the stable entrance where the ground has frozen slick. From the bakehouse comes the first warm breath of ovens, mingled with the sour comfort of yesterday's dough. In the distance, the chapel roof glimmers with wet frost. Crows gather along the parapet, black and dignified, as though waiting to be consulted on policy. One guard throws a pebble toward them and misses by such a wide margin that the crows remain spiritually unmoved. You linger near the gate, because this is where the castle's life passes through its narrow throat. Firewood comes in, ash goes out, news arrives dirty, orders leave sealed, beggars wait just beyond the ditch, hoping for broken bread. A widow brings geese to sell, each bird complaining with the conviction of a tax collector. A carter arrives with one wheel cracked from the rutted road, and the porters debate whether he may block the arch while he mends it. The wheel leans drunkenly in the mud, and you have the uneasy feeling you will see it again before the day is done. A guard on the wall lowers a rope basket for a forgotten glove, and the others mock him softly, as men do when too cold to be truly cruel. Their watch is not glorious. Mostly it is waiting, listening, checking shadows, counting shapes in fog, and pretending not to be frightened by foxes. Yet the castle depends on them, these half-frozen men above the gate, and on the porters below, and on the sleepy servants who know which latch sticks, which cart belongs to whom, which pilgrim smells of honest road dust, and which merchant is hiding short measure beneath his sacks. This is the strange truth of the place. The lord may own the castle, but ordinary hands keep it alive. The bell sounds again, fuller now, rolling over roof, yard, stable, ditch, and road. You feel it in your ribs. The porter closes the wicket for a moment and rests his palm against the oak, as if greeting an old beast. The sky grows pearled and pale. Torches fade. Smoke lifts. Mud shines. Somewhere inside, the first pot of pottage begins to simmer, and the castle, having admitted the morning one suspicious face at a time, breathes a little wider around you. The bell's fading note still seems to tremble in the stones when the porter lifts his chin toward the inner yard and tells you, in a voice made rough by cold and habit, that if you wish to keep out from under cartwheels, buckets, and noble tempers, you had best follow old Oswin for a while. Old Oswin is not introduced with ceremony. He appears from a side passage beneath the gatehouse, narrow as a folded knife, wearing a dark wool hood, patched hose, and a leather belt heavy with so many keys that he sounds like a small iron storm whenever he walks. He carries a horn lantern in one hand, its yellow light shivering behind scraped panels, and in the other hand he holds a ring of larger keys, blackened from years of palms, rain, oil, and ash. You follow him because everyone else makes way for him without quite seeming to notice. The kitchen girl steps aside. The muleteer lowers his voice. Even the sleepy dog near the brazier opens one eye, recognizes the rhythm of Oswin's steps, and decides that this particular human is part of the castle's furniture. It pads after you for 3 paces, then stops, perhaps remembering that furniture rarely drops food. Oswin does not speak at first. He moves through the yard in the pale morning, past the stable where a groom curses softly at a stubborn buckle, past a stack of firewood glittering with frost, past the cracked cart wheel still leaning in mud like an accusation. The keys at his belt knock against one another with each step chapel, buttery, pantry, lower cellar, upper cellar, linen chest, outer postern, lord's wardrobe, strong cupboard, spare lock whose door no one remembers. No one can quite agree whether every old castle truly has a key to a door long since walled up, but Oswin carries one that he says is for nothing good, and that seems reason enough not to ask again. He leads you first to a small oak door tucked beneath a stair. The wood is swollen from damp, and when he pushes the key into the lock, he listens before turning it, as though locks have moods. Perhaps they do. This one resists with a scrape like a tired throat, then gives way. Inside lies a storage nook of lanterns, broom handles, spare rope, and 3 cracked buckets that no one has thrown away because medieval households believe deeply in the future usefulness of damaged buckets. Oswin counts the lanterns with his finger, touches the coil of rope, then closes the door and locks it again. This is not grand work, yet it has the gravity of prayer. In a castle, anything unlocked becomes borrowed, misplaced, eaten, blamed on a servant, or mysteriously needed by someone much richer than you. You pass beneath a covered walk where the wind carries the smell of damp hay and horse sweat. Oswin takes you to the buttery door next, near the passage leading toward the kitchens. The buttery is not for butter alone, despite what the word tries to promise with suspicious confidence. It is where ale is kept, where cups and drinking vessels are guarded, where the castle's daily thirst is measured out in jugs, barrels, and stern looks. A young servant waits there, rubbing his hands together, his cheeks red, his patience thin. Oswin unlocks the door, and cool air breathes out, rich with wood, stale ale, and the faint sourness of casks. Rows of barrels rest on trestles, leather jacks hang from pegs. A tallyboard leans against the wall, marked with notches for the household's allowance. Oswin checks the bung of one barrel, sniffs another, and mutters that yesterday's small ale had better not have turned sharp unless it wishes to explain itself to the steward. You stand in the doorway while the servant fills 2 jugs, careful not to spill. In this world, ale is breakfast, comfort, wage, medicine, and sometimes excuse. Some swear that a sprig of rosemary hung above a barrel keeps it wholesome, and discourages malicious spirits from souring the drink. Oswin says rosemary mostly discourages flies, which may be the more practical miracle. From there, he takes you down 3 worn steps to the pantry, where coarse bread lies stacked beneath linen cloths. Trenchers from yesterday are sorted for reuse, and dried peas wait in sacks with tied mouths. The smell is quieter here, flour dust, old crust, cold stone. A woman with sleeves rolled to the elbow is already slicing bread with a short knife, her hands moving steadily while she hums under her breath. Oswin unlocks a chest at her request, revealing salt wrapped in cloth. A precious thing kept close because salt has value, power, and the wonderful habit of making winter food less tragic. She takes only what she's allowed, pinching it between finger and thumb as carefully as if lifting powdered silver. The keys move again. You follow him along a passage where the ceiling lowers, and your shoulder brushes the wall. Beeswax candles burn in little iron brackets near the chapel turn. their flames small and steady, better scented than tallow, and therefore fit for holier places and wealthier noses. Oswin pauses before the chapel door, removes his cap, and unlocks it with a key longer than your hand. Within, the air changes. It is cold, but clean, carrying wax, stone, and old incense. Pale light seeps through narrow glass. A small chest near the altar holds cloths, vessels, and perhaps a relic in a silver case, though those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the relic is a saint's finger bone, a saint's tooth, or merely a very persuasive bit of somebody. Oswin does not open the relic chest. He only checks the lock, presses 2 fingers to the lid, and nods once. Even a man of keys knows some doors are better left to priests, saints, and whoever cleans the candle wax. As you stand there, the distant monastery bell answers the castle chapel bell, and the sound floats in from beyond the walls, soft as breath over a bowl of warm pottage. For a moment, even Oswin's keys grow still. Then the rounds continue. He brings you to a low door leading toward the cellars. The stair descends into air that smells of earth, apples, old straw, and winter waiting patiently in barrels. Your boots find each step by feel. At the bottom, the lantern paints gold over stone shelves, sealed crocks, smoked fish, hanging herbs, onions braided together, and sacks of grain guarded from damp by wooden pallets. Here the castle stores survival in shapes you can touch: beans, flour, salted meat, vinegar, cheese, candles, spare cloth, dried fruit saved for feast days or sickness. Oswin checks locks, latches, pegs, and seals of wax pressed over storage jars. He notices everything: a shifted sack, a loose hinge, a mouse dropping near a flour bin. He looks at that last detail with the disappointment of a judge who has seen society fail. At one cupboard, he shows you a smaller key, polished bright by use. For the spice box, he says, and for the first time you hear pride under the gravel of his voice. Inside are pepper, cloves, cinnamon, and other costly comforts that have travelled farther than most people ever will, passing through ports, markets, toll gates, and hands that all wanted paying. A pinch can sweeten wine, warm a sauce, flatter a guest, or convince the lord that dinner has been improved by geography. The box closes with a click that feels final. As you climb back upward, your knees grateful for the return of air, Oswin tells you that iron keys are sometimes placed beneath pillows to keep away nightmares, though he has never tried it because sleeping on one would be punishment enough. Still, you understand the belief. Iron belongs to locks, hinges, gates, horseshoes, knives, bells, and boundaries. It holds things shut, it keeps things out, around Oswin's waist. It gives the soft authority of someone who knows where the castle's secrets sleep. By the time you return to the yard, the sky has brightened, and the castle is louder. Cooks shout, hooves strike stone. A clerk calls for the messenger boy. The dog has reappeared near the cracked wheel, pretending not to follow anyone in particular. Oswin stops by the inner gate, sorts his keys by touch alone, and looks toward the great hall, where voices are beginning to gather behind closed doors. Soon other hands will sweep, cook, mend, haul, polish, count, and complain. But for now, the old keykeeper stands in the morning with the whole castle hanging from his belt, and you feel how each locked room has opened the day a little further. The great hall receives you with the chilly patience of a room that has held too many winters to be impressed by another one. Oswin leaves you at the threshold with a clatter of keys and a warning not to step where old rushes have been heaped, unless you wish to carry yesterday on your boots. The dog, deciding you're useful as furniture, noses past your ankle and slips inside first. It sneezes immediately, which tells you nearly everything you need to know about the floor. The hall is vast in the dim morning, its rafters blackened by smoke, its long tables pushed aside, its hearth a sleepy bed of embers beneath ash. Narrow windows admit grey light strained through wool. Across the stone lies a tired covering of rushes, straw, crumbs, candle ends, picked bones, herbs, spilled ale, and dark patches servants learn not to investigate before breakfast. Medieval comfort, you understand, often means placing something softer over something worse. A woman named Avis rules this hour. She's not tall, not richly dressed, not praised in poems, and yet the hall bends around her will. Her sleeves are tied back, her cap is pinned firmly. In one hand she holds a wooden rake, in the other, rushes bound with twine. Two younger maids work beside her, lifting the old covering into baskets while wearing faces of people who have smelled stronger things than they wish to describe. Avis tells you to stand near the wall, where you may be decorative and avoid becoming another obstacle. You obey, this is wisdom. The work begins with scraping. The rake whispers and rasps across stone, drawing up matted rushes in damp folds. Dust rises. So does the smell smoke, old ale, wet wool, gravy, mud, and the barnyard memory of everyone who entered yesterday. The dog digs into one heap, finds nothing worth betraying its dignity for, and moves on. Avis mutters that dogs are excellent judges of scraps and terrible judges of cleanliness. Some swear that if rushes are left too long, they breed fleas and ill temper. And looking at the maids, you find the belief plausible. Fresh rushes arrive from a side door, carried by a boy pink-nosed from the cold. They were cut from marshy ground beyond lower fields, dried as weather allowed, and stored under cover. Avis sorts them by touch, rejecting any that smell sour or feel soft with hidden damp. Good rushes soften footsteps, soak spills, warm stone, and give the hall a surface renewed when feasting, arguing, sleeping, judging, and noble dripping become too much for one floor to bear. But Avis does not scatter rushes plain. From a small cloth bag, she adds bruised herbs, sweet flag, meadow sweet, lavender when the household can spare it, and tansy, sharp and bitter, said to discourage fleas, flies, and possibly unwanted conversation. No one can quite agree whether tansy truly drives vermin away, but everyone agrees it smells more hopeful than old straw. She crushes the herbs between her palms, and for a moment the hall changes. Under smoke and damp, a green scent opens. Like summer fields pressed into stone, the maids move down the room, spreading the new rushes in even strokes. Their hands are red from cold water, their shoes are patched. One has tied a blue thread around her wrist, a charm against aching joints given by an aunt who claims it must be knotted under a waning moon. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the charm helps or simply gives the wrist something brave to wear. The girl catches you looking, smiles shyly, and returns to her work as Avis inspects the line like a marshal arranging troops. Near the dais, the high table stands where the lord and honoured guests will sit later, higher by a few steps and therefore, in the household's opinion, nearer to draughts. Avis scatters extra herbs there, not from affection for nobility, but because noble noses complain loudly. Yesterday's trenchers have been taken away, though one heel of coarse bread hides beneath a bench. The dog discovers it with theatrical humility, as if accepting a sacred duty. You pretend not to see. The dog pretends it is starving. Servants carry folded cloths and shake them near the hearth. A half-burned beeswax candle waits on a shelf to be trimmed and used again, because wax is too dear to surrender merely for being tired. Tallow dips, cheaper and smokier, sit in a basket. Avis says a good house wastes neither wax nor salt nor sound rope, and after seeing Oswin count cracked buckets as treasure, you believe her. Castles do not survive on grandeur. They survive by keeping leftovers useful. As the rushes thicken beneath your feet, the hall softens. Footsteps lose their hard edge. The hearth smoke seems less sour. The tables look ready for bowls of pottage, jugs of ale, smoked fish, onions, and bread thick enough to forgive the flour. A boy brings fresh water for washing hands, though the cloudy basin will probably be called clean until someone important objects. From outside comes the creak of the broken cartwheel, followed by a sigh so weary it might have been carved from oak. Avis pauses at the centre of the hall and looks up toward the rafters, where smoke has painted every beam the colour of old night. She makes the sign of the cross, just as one more daily motion. Some households place protective herbs in the rushes before feast days, especially if guests are expected, because guests bring gossip, lice, envy, and sometimes worse musicians. The joke is so dry that it takes a moment to land, and then one maid laughs into her sleeve. By the time the work is done, the hall smells of green stems, ash, wax, and waking food. The cold remains, but it has been made bearable. The floor, which held stains of yesterday's hunger and noise, lies fresh beneath morning light. Avis gathers her rake, surveys her kingdom, and nods once. It is the smallest coronation you have ever seen, and perhaps one of the most deserved. Beyond the far passage, the kitchens begin to roar, and the scent of roasting fat reaches you like a promise drifting through smoke. The promise of roasting fat draws you from Avis's fresh green kingdom into a passage where the air grows warmer with every step. Behind you, the great hall settles beneath its new rushes, smelling almost respectable. Ahead, the kitchens breathe like some huge red animal under the castle's ribs. Smoke slides along the ceiling beams. Heat gathers in waves. Voices overlap, low and sharp, sleepy and impatient. And somewhere a pan rings against stone with the bright complaint of a bell that has lost its chapel. You duck beneath a lintel blackened by years of soot and enter a world where dawn has already become labour. The kitchen is not one room so much as a little weather system of fire, steam, grease, flour, damp wool, and orders shouted before anyone can forget them. At the largest hearth, flames lick beneath an iron bar where joints of meat turn slowly over the coals. Fat drops with soft hisses into the fire. Smoke rises, catches in the rafters, and folds back down until every person in the room seems lightly smoked, like fish kept for Lent. A boy sits near the roasting spit with his knees drawn up, one hand on the crank, his eyes half closed. His task is simple in the cruel way many medieval tasks are simple: keep turning. Turn too slowly, and the meat blackens on one side. Turn too quickly, and the cook accuses you of being born without sense. Stop entirely, and you become the morning's cautionary tale. The boy's sleeve is patched at the elbow, his face flushed from heat, his hair stuck damply to his forehead. Beside him, a small dog watches the dripping fat with the devotion usually reserved for saints' relics. This is not the same dog that followed you from the hall, though yours soon appears in the doorway and regards the kitchen dog with quiet professional interest. The two dogs stare at one another. No challenge is made. The matter of who deserves scraps is clearly too sacred to rush. The cook is a broad woman with arms powdered in flour and a voice that can cross the room faster than an arrow. Her name is Malkin, and everyone moves when she speaks. She tends 3 pots at once, pottage thick with peas and onions, a broth for the infirmary, and a darker sauce warmed with vinegar, breadcrumbs, and a costly pinch from the spice box Oswin locked away. A younger servant grinds mustard seed with a stone, blinking through tears from its bite. Another trims trenchers from yesterday's coarse loaves, cutting away edges too hard even for hungry men and saving the rest to hold meat. Soak gravy, and later feed dogs, beggars, or pigs, depending on how judgmental the day becomes. You stand near the wall where you're least likely to be mistaken for useful. This is wise, though not entirely successful. Malkin notices you, thrusts a wooden bowl into your hands, and tells you to hold it beneath a hanging cloth while whey drains from curds. You become part of the castle kitchen by accident, which is how many careers probably begin. No one can quite agree whether kitchen boys are better than turnspit dogs, or turnspit dogs better than boys. In some great houses, little dogs run inside a wheel that turns the spit, trotting in smoky circles while dinner rotates above the flame. Here, the wheel stands broken against the wall, missing 2 slats and 1 iron pin. The cook says it will be mended when the smith has time, which means sometime between next Tuesday and the Last Judgment. Until then, boys turn the crank. Dogs supervise, and everyone pretends this is a system. Near the second hearth, an older man called Hob tends the bread oven. He has eyebrows singed so often they seem more rumour than hair. He tests the heat by thrusting in his hand and counting heartbeats, then nodding as if he has negotiated with the fire and won modest terms. Flat loaves slide in on a peel, ashes swept aside. The smell of baking bread rises warm and heavy, wrapping around the sharper scents of onion, smoke, and boiling bones. Medieval kitchens know how to comfort and threaten you at the same time. A potboy carries water from the yard, sloshing half of it onto his shoes. Another servant skims foam from broth with a wooden spoon. A girl plucks feathers from a goose with the expression of someone reconsidering every promise made in childhood. Above the hearth hangs a bunch of herbs tied with string sage, thyme, rue, and a twist of rosemary meant to sweeten the air and protect the food from ill luck. Some swear that if a knife falls and points toward the door, an unwelcome visitor will arrive before night. When a small knife clatters from the table and lands facing the pantry, everyone pauses. Malkin looks at it, looks at the room, and says the unwelcome visitor had better bring onions. The messenger boy from the gatehouse appears briefly, still clutching his sealed parchment, hoping perhaps for warmth or breakfast. Malkin gives him a heel of bread without asking his business. The act is quick, almost hidden, but you see it. The boy bows, crumbs already at his mouth, and vanishes back toward the clerk's chamber. In castles, mercy often looks like a piece of stale bread passed sideways before anyone important notices. The spit boy's head nods. The crank slows. Instantly, the kitchen dog gives a sharp little bark, whether from training, greed, or outrage you cannot tell. The boy jolts awake and begins turning again. The meat shines in the firelight, browned and crackling, while the cook mutters that saints preserve her from sleepy children and ambitious flames. Even now, it is hard to tell whether she means this as prayer, complaint, or recipe. You hold the draining bowl until your hands ache. The warmth of the kitchen seeps through your cloak, drying the wet wool smell that has followed you since the gate. Outside, another bell marks the hour, faint beneath the kitchen roar. You remember the porter's brazier, Oswin's keys, Avis's fresh rushes, and the castle seems less like a fortress now than a bodygates for a mouth, cellars for a belly, hall for a chest, kitchens for a hot, restless heart. At last Malkin takes the bowl from you, peers inside, and grunts in a way that might mean approval. You accept it as such. Servants lift the first pot of pottage with cloth-wrapped hands. Trenchers are stacked. Jugs are filled from the buttery. The roasted meat continues its slow turning, patient as the day itself. Smoke curls upward into the rafters, and the two dogs settle side by side, united by hope. You step back into the passage with your face warm, your clothes scented with fire, and the strange knowledge that a castle's glory may depend on one half-asleep boy remembering to keep a handle moving. The passage outside the kitchen feels almost cold after the red roar of Malkin's hearths. Smoke still clings to your cloak as faithfully as a poor cousin at a feast. Behind you, the spit turns, the dogs hope, and the cook's voice rises again in command. Before you, the castle narrows into a colder vein of stone leading away from bread, broth, and all the decent smells that help a household pretend it is civilized. A small man with a leather cap waits near the yard door, stamping mud from his boots. His name is Watt, though most people do not use it when speaking of him. They call him the gong farmer, the privy man, or, when they wish to be polite from a safe distance, the one who sees to the pits. He carries a covered wooden bucket, a short-handled rake, a coil of rope, and a lantern whose flame seems reluctant to share his profession. Around his neck hangs a pewter token of St. Roch, protector against plague and ugly illnesses, which feels both hopeful and extremely practical. What gives you one look and says nothing? It is the expression of a man who has learned that curiosity fades quickly when properly introduced to reality. You follow him because the castle is honest here in ways it is not in the hall. Noble banners may hang from rafters, beeswax may burn before relics, and pepper may sleep locked in Oswin's spice box. But bodies remain bodies. They eat pottage, they drink ale, they shiver under blankets, and then the castle must answer for all of it. What's work waits in the margins, behind guard-robe doors, beneath chutes, near pits dug in earth, and at the base of walls where no poet lingers. The yard is pale with morning mist. Frost whitens barrels and roof tiles. A groom leads a horse past and turns its head when it catches the scent of Watt's bucket. The dog from the hall follows you as far as the corner, sniffs the air, and suddenly remembers urgent business elsewhere. This, you think, is betrayal, though also good judgment. What leads you along the outer wall where the stones sweat cold? Above, narrow privy chambers jut from the curtain wall, little closets set where waste drops through chutes into pits below. In summer, he says, flies rise like evil thoughts. In winter, things freeze, which is not improvement so much as postponement. No one can quite agree whether cold weather makes the work kinder or simply more stubborn. What seems to vote for stubborn? He lifts a wooden cover from a pit screened by woven hurdles. You step back before your mind fully tells your feet to do so. The smell arrives with confidence. It is not described by polite people, and you understand why polite people are sometimes useful. What works with steady care? He sprinkles ash from the kitchen hearth and old straw over the surface to thicken and quiet it, then uses his rake and bucket with the calm rhythm of a craftsman. Ash, straw, soil, and time make the difference between a castle that endures and a castle that poisons itself in its own shadow. Some swear that rue tucked into the nose or held in the mouth protects against foul vapours. What keeps rue and mint wrapped in cloth and chews it while he works. Others carry vinegar-soaked rags, or mutter a charm learned from a grandmother who insisted bad air had teeth. Even now, it is hard to tell whether any of it helps, but the sharp green bitterness gives you something to breathe around, and that is mercy enough. A boy from the stables arrives pushing a barrow lined with old straw. He keeps his face turned away as though the eastern sky has become suddenly fascinating. What tells him where to set it and not to spill? Because if he spills, what will make him explain to the steward why the lower path is unfit for anyone wearing shoes they value? The boy obeys with the reverence of terror. Medieval manners, you notice, improve wonderfully near consequences. The work moves slowly. What clears the lower catch beneath a garderobe, scrapes a channel thickened by cold, and checks the planks that screen the pit from the path. He knows where stone has cracked, where rats nose through, where rainwater flows after storms, and where careless servants empty chamber pots despite being told 300 times not to do so there. Like Oswin with locks and Avis with rushes, what reads the castle by signs almost no one else wants to see. From beyond the wall comes the faint sound of the road waking cartwheels, a distant shout, perhaps the muleteer arguing over the cracked wheel. The market day will gather soon. People will buy bread, wool, fish, herbs, and pilgrim badges stamped with saints. They will look up and see strength, towers, lordship, stone. They will not think of what in the mist, sealing a pit with the ash and straw so the morning can continue without complaint. You hold the lantern while he knots the rope around a covered barrel. Your hand aches from the cold handle. The flame trembles, painting Watt's face in tired gold. He tells you that what he gathers will be carted beyond the walls, mixed with other refuse, and sometimes spread on fields after proper weighting. Waste returns to earth. Earth returns grain. Grain returns bread, and bread returns, eventually, to Watt. It is a circle no priest draws in a manuscript margin, probably because the illuminators have standards. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether gong farmers are unlucky or merely avoided. What says unlucky men do not have steady work? He says this while tightening the lid on his barrel with a mallet, then wiping his hands in sand and ash until the skin reddens. When the chapel bell rings again, the sound floats cleanly over the wall, absurdly beautiful. What pauses, removes his cap for half a breath, and sets it back on. Even the least praised labour hears the same bell. By the time he is finished, the sky is lifted from grey to a thin winter blue. The pit is covered, the path is sprinkled with ash. The barrow waits by the postern, and Watt pushes it forward with bent shoulders and sure steps. Behind you, the castle's upper windows catch the morning light. Within them, people will soon eat, pray, bargain, complain, and sit comfortably, never once blessing the man who made comfort possible. At the postern, Oswin appears with his ring of keys and unlocks the small door without a word. Watt nods, wheels his burden into the mist beyond the wall, and disappears toward the low fields where frost lies white over sleeping furrows. You stand in the doorway listening to the soft grind of the barrow fading away, and the castle breathes cleaner behind you. The postern closes behind Wat with a dull wooden thud, and for a moment you remain beside Oswin in the thin morning light, listening to the barrow fade into the fields. The air beyond the wall has taken the worst of his errand away with it, leaving only frost, mud, and the faint smoky scent that clings to your cloak from Malkin's kitchen. Oswin locks the little door again, tests the latch twice, and disappears into another passage with his keys murmuring at his belt like iron insects. You turn back toward the yard, where the castle has now fully admitted the day. Servants cross in every direction. A boy carries kindling under one arm and a heel of bread in his mouth. A groom drags a bucket toward the stables. Near the well, 2 women are already loading baskets with linen, shirts, caps, aprons, tablecloths, and woolen cloths that have seen too much of the hall, the kitchen, the buttery, and human nature. Their sleeves are rolled, their shoulders wrapped in coarse cloaks, and their faces carry that calm expression people get when the work ahead is so unpleasant that complaining would only waste warmth. The elder of the 2 is called Elund. Her hands are broad, red, and cracked at the knuckles, and when she lifts a basket, the younger servants stop pretending they might help and simply get out of her way. Beside her walks a girl named Joan, who carries a bundle of smaller linens against her chest and keeps blowing into her fingers. The dog that abandoned you during Wat's errand reappears near the well, looking innocent and slightly damp around the nose. It follows at a safe distance, perhaps hoping laundry includes food, which shows touching optimism and poor education. Elund leads the way through a side gate toward the stream below the castle slope. The path is muddy where carts have passed, frozen where shadows lie, and treacherous everywhere else out of habit. Your boots slide once, and Joan catches your sleeve with a quick laugh. "Careful," she says. The hill takes tolls too. Below, the stream moves under a skin of mist, dark water slipping past reeds stiff with frost. A wooden washing board stands near the bank, along with low stones smoothed by years of women kneeling beside them. On the far side, bare willows lean over the water like tired old men trying to hear gossip. Here the castle's fine appearance is beaten, boiled, rinsed, wrung, and argued back into being. The first basket opens. Linen cloths come out stiff with cold and old stains. Elund sorts them without ceremony: kitchen, hall, chapel, lord's chamber, servants' shifts, stable rags, and one embroidered napkin that makes her sigh as though a noble guest has personally insulted her. The chapel linens are set apart. They will be washed more carefully, with cleaner water if such a thing can be found, and dried away from smoke. Some swear that altar cloths must not be wrung too harshly, lest the saint whose relic lies beneath the chapel silver take offence. No one can quite agree whether saints concern themselves with laundry technique, but Elund handles them gently all the same. A small cauldron hangs over a fire already coaxed to life from twigs, dry rush, and a coal carried in a lidded pot from the castle hearth. Into the heating water goes wood ash steeped and strained to make lye, sharp enough to bite dirt and, if careless, skin. Elund warns you not to touch it unless you enjoy learning through pain. Soap exists, yes, but it is precious, and much castle washing depends on lye, sand, stale urine collected for its cleansing power, hard rubbing, and the moral certainty that fabric should suffer so people may look respectable. Joan kneels by the stream and begins rinsing linen in water so cold it seems to wring. Her breath smokes, her fingers redden quickly. She beats a cloth against the stone with a wooden paddle slap, turn, slap, dip, ring. The rhythm settles into the morning until it sounds almost like another bell, lower and wetter than the one above the chapel. You help carry a basket nearer the fire and find that wet cloth weighs more than guilt. Elund lifts a wool blanket and frowns at it. Wool is troublesome. Wash it too fiercely, and it shrinks into a sad little thing fit only for a child, a dog, or a very disappointed monk. She kneads it carefully in warm water scented faintly with herbs, then lays it across a frame where steam rises in ghostly ribbons. The smell is thick wet wool, ash, cold river, smoke, and the faint sweetness of lavender saved for better linens. You remember your own cloak, still damp at the hem, and feel sympathy for every sheep unwillingly involved in civilization. Other women arrive from the village path with bundles of their own. They trade news while they work a cow gone dry, a roof that leaks, a peddler selling pilgrim badges suspiciously far from any pilgrimage route, and the cracked cartwheel near the gate, which has apparently become everyone's business. One woman swears she saw a monk from the nearby house hide a bundle under his cloak at dawn. Another says monks always look suspicious in bad weather. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether this particular monk is guilty of anything, but the rumour warms the washing place nearly as well as the fire. A charm is tied to one drying frame, a red thread, a bent pin, and a sprig of rue. Joan says it keeps linen from being stolen by jealous spirits or wandering hands, whichever comes first. Elund says linen is stolen by people with cold beds and quick fingers, not spirits, but she does not remove the charm. Practical women, you notice, often leave room for the invisible just in case. The work continues slowly. Cloths are soaked, beaten, rinsed, wrung, shaken, and spread over hedges where winter sunlight can do what little it can. Steam rises from the cauldron and softens the hard morning. Your hands ache after only a short while, and you understand that castle cleanliness is not a state, but a battle fought every day by women with cracked skin and stronger backs than most knights in songs. The lord's tablecloths, the cook's aprons, the guest sheets, the chapel linen, the towels set near basins for polite washing before meals, all of it passes through these hands, through ash water, stream water, frost, smoke, and patience. By late morning, the sun has edged above the bare trees. The washed linen flaps pale against the brown world, like small flags of surrender. The dog noses a damp cloth, sneezes, and wisely retreats. Elund straightens, presses both hands to her lower back, and looks toward the castle, where smoke rises from chimneys and bells mark another hour. Soon these baskets will climb the hill again, heavier with damp, lighter with disgrace. You take one handle, Joan takes the other, and together you begin the slow walk upward, carrying the castle's freshness back towards stone, rushes, hearths, and all the waiting rooms that will dirty it again before night. By the time you climb back through the side gate with one aching hand hooked beneath the laundry basket, the castle has changed again. Morning has thickened into the busy middle hours, when no corner is truly quiet and every passage seems to carry someone late for something. The clean linen steams faintly in the cold air, and Joan laughs under her breath when the dog trots proudly beside you, as if it has helped carry the load through hardship, frost, and heroic dampness. Elund says the creature has the soul of a tax collector present at every labour, useful at none. You leave the baskets near a covered passage where the linens will be sorted, dried further, folded, aired, and complained over. Your fingers sting as warmth returns to them. For a little while, you stand beneath the eaves, listening to the castle's layered sounds, hammers near the yard, a hen objecting somewhere near the kitchen, Malkin's voice rising like weather, the scrape of a cartwheel being examined by men who all believe themselves experts. Above all that, the chapel bell gives a smaller note, not a full call to prayer, just a reminder that time belongs to God, though the steward will also have opinions. A young servant passes carrying a basket of candle stubs, and Elund nods after him. Wax room, she says, as though naming a place both holy and faintly sticky. You follow him through a narrow passage that smells of stone dust, old smoke, and drying wool, then down into a low chamber warmed by a charcoal brazier and lit by several small flames that tremble in the draught. Here, the castle stores and makes its light. The room is dim but busy, and the air is thick with scents you now begin to distinguish: clean beeswax, smoky tallow, linen wick, hot metal, sheep fat, honeyed sweetness, and the faint sour note of old grease. On a table lie bundles of rushes, peeled and dried, ready to be dipped in fat for rushlights. Along the wall hang lengths of wick from a rod, each one weighted at the bottom to keep it straight. In one corner, a woman named Sabine tends a pot of melted wax with the attention of an abbess guarding a relic. Beside her, a boy dips strings into tallow, lifts them, lets them cool, dips them again, and looks as though he has been doing this since the Norman conquest. Sabine has careful hands and a calm face, the kind people trust with things that must not spill, scorch, or vanish. She wears an apron darkened by years of work, and her sleeves are rolled back from wrists marked with tiny burns. When you enter, she does not ask who you are. She only points to a stool far from the pot, which in this castle seems to be the polite way of saying, "Sit there and do not become expensive. You sit." A candle, you discover, is not simply a candle. It is time, status, prayer, work, and money made solid enough to burn. Beeswax candles are pale, sweet, and costly, saved for chapel, high table, noble chambers, saints' days, and moments when the household wishes to smell less like boiled sheep. Tallow candles are cheaper, smokier, softer, and more likely to bend in warm hands, but they give light enough to mend a sleeve, find a stair, watch a sickbed, or keep fear from gathering too boldly in the corners. Rushlights are poorer still, thin strips of rush dipped in fat, burning briefly, bravely, and with the humble dignity of something that knows it will not be remembered. Sabine lifts a dipped wick from the beeswax and turns it slowly. The wax clings in a smooth skin, bright as cream. She sets it aside and takes another. Dip, lift, cool, dip, lift, cool. The rhythm is as steady as Joan's paddle at the stream, as Oswin's keys, as Avis's rake. Castle life, your learning, is full of small repeated motions that keep darkness, dirt, hunger, cold, and confusion from winning too early. On another table, candle stubs from the great hall are sorted by quality. Half-burned beeswax from the chapel is scraped clean, melted again, and shaped into smaller lights. Nothing is wasted. A bent candle may become a bedside taper, a smoky end may help light the kitchen fire, a thin rushlight may guide a servant down a passage at midnight, which is useful because medieval staircases appear to have been designed by people who disliked ankles. A monk from the nearby house sits near the brazier, warming his hands around a cup of thin ale. You recognize the suspicious slope of his shoulders from the rumours at the washing stream, or perhaps you only think you do. His name is Brother Anselm, and he has come to collect candles promised for the monastery guest house, and for a small roadside shrine where pilgrims stop before taking the forest road. Tucked beside him is a cloth bundle that everyone pretends not to notice. No one can quite agree whether it contains books, relic cloth, cheese, or something he does not wish the steward to tax. The dog sniffs it once, sneezes, and loses interest, which may clear the monk of cheese at least. Brother Anselm watches Sabine work and tells you, very softly, that beeswax is fitting for holy places because bees were believed by many to be pure little creatures, industrious and mysterious, making sweetness without the usual barnyard vulgarities of animal life. Some swear bees understand church bells and settle more peacefully when a hive is told of a death in the household. Sabine says bees understand smoke, weather, and whether fools bother them. But she still murmurs news to the hives when a lord dies, because there is no sense in offending anything that makes wax. Near the window slit stands a shallow mould for thicker candles, used when the household needs many at once. Wax is poured carefully, wick centred, surface skimmed. The boy with the tallow pot trims wicks using a small knife and saves every clipping. He tells you that a candle burning blue means spirits are near. Sabine tells him a blue flame means a draught, damp wick, or bad fat. Then she pauses and adds that spirits probably enjoy draft too. This satisfies everyone more than it should. As the afternoon light weakens outside, the room seems to grow more important. You think of all the places these candles will go. One will burn before the uncertain relic in the chapel chest, whether tooth, finger, or persuasive bone. One will sit beside a clerk's inkpot while rents are scratched into a ledger. One will guide Oswin through a locked stair. One will soften the face of someone sick under wool blankets. One will shine over a feast where fresh rushes hide the stone. Trenchers soak gravy, and noble noses approve the air. One may be carried by a watchman at midnight when the wind troubles the shutters and the dog lifts its head from the ashes. Sabine hands Brother Anselm his bundle at last, tied with plain cord. He tucks it under his cloak, thanks her, and gives a blessing broad enough to include wax, wicks, cracked hands, and anyone trying not to stumble in the dark. Then he slips away, still suspicious, still chilly, still perhaps innocent. You remain in the wax room a little longer, watching the dipped candles hang like pale winter fruit. Outside, the castle's noise lowers toward evening. The laundry dries, the kitchen smokes, the gate admits and refuses, and here, in this low, warm chamber, Sabine and her tired boy quietly make the fragile stars by which the whole stone world will find its way after sunset. When you leave the wax room, the castle seems dimmer, as though Sabine has quietly gathered the daylight into her hanging candles and kept it there for later. The passage smells of warm wax behind you and cold stone ahead. A servant hurries past with a folded cloth over one arm, another carries a basket of rushes toward the hall, and somewhere in the yard Melkin shouts at a boy with such force that even the hens fall silent for a respectful heartbeat. The bell above the chapel gives a soft mark of the hour, and the note trails over roofs, chimneys, and the muddy yard where the cracked cartwheel still waits under the judgment of 3 men, 2 tools, and no visible progress. You step into the outer air and find the dog waiting near the stable wall, pretending it has been there by design. It gives you one look, yawns, and follows when you turn toward the lower gate. Beyond the castle, the fields lie pale under afternoon frost, hedges black against the dull sky, with strips of brown earth showing where ploughs have opened the winter ground. Smoke rises from village roofs below. Farther off, a monastery bell answers faintly from across the valley, small and silver, as if the day itself is being stitched together by sound. Near the outer field, a man stands with one arm lifted, gloved in thick leather, while a hawk balances upon his fist as calmly as a noblewoman judging table manners. This is Rolf, the castle falconer. His cloak is fur-lined but patched, his boots muddy, and his cap has a feather tucked into it not for beauty, you suspect, but because his work demands a certain amount of theatrical bird confidence. At his belt hang strips of meat, a small knife, a whistle, and a leather hood shaped to cover the hawk's eyes. The bird shifts its talons on his glove and turns its head with sharp, golden attention. You slow without meaning to. Everyone does. A falcon on a fist has that effect. Horses may be strong, hounds eager, oxen patient, but hawks carry a kind of silent royalty that makes even tired servants lower their voices. Ralph notices you and nods toward the field, granting permission to walk beside him as though he owns not only the bird but also the air above the hedge. The hawk's name is Merowyn, though Ralph says birds answer less to names than to hunger, habit, and whether a human has made himself useful. A small silver bell is tied to one of her legs, chiming faintly when she shifts. Her hood, when Ralph slips it on, settles her into stillness, darkening the world so she does not startle at every crow, cart, fluttering cloth, or foolish person waving too quickly. Some swear that a hooded hawk dreams of the sky even when she cannot see it. No one can quite agree whether birds dream as people do, but Merowyn stands so composed in her little darkness that the idea feels almost believable. Rolf carries her past the kitchen garden, past low bee skeps wrapped for winter, and out toward the ridge where the fields open. A boy follows with a lure, a bundle of feathers and leather tied to a cord. He is red-cheeked, serious, and clearly terrified of disappointing both falconer and hawk, which is a difficult position for anyone before supper. The dog trots at your heel until Merowyn turns her hooded head slightly. The dog then becomes very interested in a tuft of grass several paces away. This, again, is not cowardice, it is diplomacy. Falconry, Rolf explains softly, is not merely hunting, it is rank, leisure, law, patience, and a little madness wearing feathers. Lords keep hawks to show refinement and power. Ladies may fly merlins. Knights may boast of goshawks. Priests, depending on local discipline and personal weakness, may admire them more than strictly necessary. Even the kinds of birds people are allowed to keep can reveal where they stand in the world. Because medieval society is so committed to hierarchy that it apparently extends class anxiety to birds. You cross a field rimmed with frost. The earth is hard beneath your boots, and the low winter sun shines behind clouds like a candle behind horn. Rolf removes Merowyn's hood. At once the hawk wakes into brightness. Her head turns, her body tightens. The whole world seems to narrow through her eyes. The falconer lifts his fist, waits, and then, with a motion almost too slight to notice, lets her go. She rises. For a moment, all the castle's labour falls away: keys, rushes, smoke, ash, laundry, wax, pottage, pits, tolls, ledgers not yet written. There is only the sweep of wings against the cold sky, the faint bell at her leg, and the field holding its breath beneath her. She circles once, then twice, climbing above hedge and road. Rolf watches without blinking. The boy grips the lure. You stand still because movement feels like a kind of interruption. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether hawks love their keepers, tolerate them, or consider them oddly shaped servants who bring meat. Ralph says love is a word for songs, and trust is enough work for one lifetime. He trains with hunger but not cruelty, reward but not softness. The bird must return because returning has become the centre of the world. Glove, meat, bell, voice, sky, glove again. The boy swings the lure in a slow circle. Feathers flash. Ralph gives a sharp call. Merowyn turns in the air, drops, and comes down with such speed that your breath catches. She strikes the lure, wings beating, talons clenched, then allows herself to be gathered back to the glove. Ralph feeds her a small piece of meat, murmuring praise as gently as a monk over a manuscript. The hawk eats with neat savagery, which is not a phrase anyone should use at a feast unless they want to be seated lower next time. You walk farther along the ridge while Ralph rests the bird. Below, the castle looks different from here. Its towers seem less like a lord's command and more like a hive of small workers, Sabin's fragile lights, Elune's washing, Avis's herbs, Oswin's keys, Wat's ash, Malkin's fire. Smoke lifts from the chimneys in slow ribbons. The gate is a dark mouth in the wall. On the road, someone still struggles with the cracked wheel, now assisted by a fourth man whose main contribution appears to be pointing. Rolf shows you his leather jesses, the thin straps that hold the bird at rest, and the tiny bells used to find her if mist swallows the field. He keeps a charm sewn into the glove, a scrap of parchment marked with a saint's name and a bit of red thread. Some say it protects the hand from a bird's anger, others say it protects the bird from envy, poor weather, and the evil eye. Ralph shrugs. It was my mother's doing, he says, which is answer enough for many things. The air grows colder as afternoon thins. Merowyn settles again beneath her hood, fierce world closed into calm leather darkness. You turn back toward the castle with frost gathering at the grass tips, and the dog following at a safer distance from the falconer's glove. The chapel bell sounds behind the wall, calling the household toward its next duty, and you carry with you the image of the hawk circling above all that stone and smoke, a small sharp keeper of status, hunger, patience, and sky. You return through the lower gate with frost still clinging to your boots, and the image of Merowyn's wings lingering in your mind, sharp and silent against the winter sky. Behind you, The fields stretch pale and quiet. Ahead, the castle gathers you back into its breath of smoke, mud, wool, and working hands. The dog trots in first with the confidence of an animal who has survived falconry by making wise personal choices. Near the yard, the cracked cartwheel has at last been removed from the axle and laid flat on the ground, where 5 men now stand around it in a solemn circle, as though it has died nobly in battle. The chapel bell marks the hour, and its sound rolls through the yard just as a thin, high whistle comes from the direction of the granaries. The dog freezes, its ears lift, its tail gives one careful wag, not friendly, not afraid, but professional. From a passage beside the storehouses steps a narrow man in a patched brown coat, carrying a sack over one shoulder, a short cudgel at his belt, and a little cage woven from willow twigs. His name is Tib, and he is the castle rat-catcher. He looks less grand than Roof the falconer, less commanding than Malkin, less solemn than Oswin, and much less fragrant than Sabine's beeswax room. Yet when he walks, people make room, not because he holds keys or hawks or hot pans, but because he knows what moves under grain sacks after dark. The dog leaves your side at once and runs to him, suddenly devoted. So this is its true allegiance, not to you, not to warmth, not even to dropped bread, but to the man most likely to uncover exciting things behind barrels. Tib scratches the dog behind one ear. "There you are, Pilgrim," he says, as if the animal has returned from a shrine. The name seems fitting, for this dog has followed gates, halls, kitchens, streams, wax rooms, and fields with the steady faith of one seeking holy scraps. Around its neck hangs a bit of cord with a small bone charm tied to it. Some swear that a dog with a charm from a weasel bone can scent rats through stone. No one can quite agree whether this is true. But Pilgrim sneezes at a wall with such conviction that you almost believe it. The granary lies in a raised building near the inner yard, set on stone supports to keep damp from the floor and discourage every creeping thing that believes stored wheat is a personal invitation. Wooden steps lead up to an oak door bound with iron. Oswin appears, as if summoned by locks themselves, and opens it with a key from his belt. He does not enter. He only gives Tib a look that says, without words, that missing grain is a sin, a crime, and a bookkeeping inconvenience. Then he locks the door open against a hook and leaves you to it. Inside, the granary air is cold and dry, full of dust motes turning slowly in the light from a narrow shutter. Sacks of barley, rye, oats, and wheat stand in rows on raised planks. Bundles of dried peas hang from beams. Clay jars of seed grain sit sealed with wax and cloth. The smell is warm in spite of the cold husk. Chaff, old wood, mouse, and the faint sweetness of stored harvest. This is not treasure in the glittering sense, but in winter it is more precious than silver cups. A castle can misplace a goblet and remain noble, lose the grain, and nobility becomes hungry very quickly. Tib crouches by the first row of sacks. He does not hurry. He studies the floorboards, the corners, the tied mouths of sacks, the small trails of dust disturbed near the wall. Pilgrim lowers its nose and moves with slow intensity, tail level, body quiet. You learn that rat-catching is part hunting, part housekeeping, part prophecy. The rat-catcher reads crumbs, droppings, gnawed rope, torn sacking, and the silence of a dog who has found something worth silence. A castle's enemies are not always armies. Sometimes they are teeth in the dark. At one corner, Tib lifts a sack and shows you a neat little bite along the seam. Grain is spilled there, only a handful, but a handful becomes a feast, and a feast becomes a family, and a family becomes a kingdom no lord invited. He sets a wooden trap baited with a smear of bacon fat, then sprinkles the area with crushed mint and tansy. He says the herbs may discourage pests. He also says rats have poor respect for herbal opinion. Still, the scent lifts sharp and green. A cousin to Avis's fresh rushes in the hall. From his pouch he takes stranger things, a twist of red thread, a little scrap of parchment marked with a cross, dried rue, and a tiny carved figure of a cat. Joan from the laundry, passing outside the shutter, would no doubt approve. Tib tucks the charm above the doorbeam and says it was placed there by the old steward's wife years ago, after a winter when rats chewed through 3 sacks and 1 pair of boots. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the charm protects the grain, comforts the people, or simply gives Tib something to blame when the rats win anyway. Pilgrim suddenly stiffens near a barrel. The dog's nose presses to the gap between wood and wall. Tib raises one finger, and the whole granary seems to hold its breath. Dust turns in the light. Outside, someone laughs near the broken wheel. Inside, your own breathing sounds much too loud. Tib shifts the barrel with slow pressure. A small shadow darts. Pilgrim springs. There is a brief tumble of paws, straw, and offended squeaking. Nothing graphic, nothing dramatic enough for a battlefield song, but enough to remind you that the castle's survival depends on quick teeth as well as iron locks. Pilgrim emerges with enormous pride and drops its prize at Tib's boot. The rat-catcher nods gravely, as if receiving tribute from a small furred knight. He gives the dog a scrap from his pouch. Pilgrim accepts it with the humility of a bishop accepting land. Tib marks the wall with chalk where he found the trail. He will return after dusk, he says, and again before dawn. Rats prefer the hours when people are asleep and candles burn low. He knows their paths from granary to buttery, from buttery to kitchen, from kitchen to hall, from hall to any warm place where crumbs gather beneath benches. He knows which doors fit poorly, which floorboards have gaps, which servants leave lids loose, and which cats are too fat from comfort to take their duties seriously. You help him carry 2 damaged sacks to a lower table, where they will be patched with coarse linen and restitched. Waste is forbidden here. Grain spilled onto a clean cloth may be sifted. Grain dirtied beyond saving may feed pigs or hens. Even chaff has use for bedding, kindling, or mixing into rough plaster. The castle keeps everything moving from purpose to purpose, as if nothing is ever truly finished until it has disappointed at least 3 different workers. As you leave the granary, Tib closes the shutter to keep out damp. Oswin returns to lock the door, and for one moment the keykeeper, rat-catcher, and dog stand together in silent agreement the stores must hold. Winter has long fingers, hunger has longer ones. The bell rings again, softer now in the afternoon air. From the market road beyond the gate comes the clink of harness and the call of traders arriving late. Tib lifts his sack. Pilgrim falls into step beside him, and you follow them down toward the town gate, where coins, wool, fish, ale, tempers, and market tolls wait beneath the castle's watching walls. You follow Tib and Pilgrim down from the granary toward the town gate, where the castle's wall throws a long cold shadow over the road. The afternoon has deepened into that grey-gold hour when smoke from village chimneys lies low. Mud begins to stiffen again, and every person in the market seems suddenly aware that daylight is not a generous host. The cracked cartwheel, at last, has been leaned upright near the gatehouse like a defeated saint in need of candles. One of the men who argued over it now claims he knew the fault from the beginning, which is a medieval custom older than most castles. Beyond the arch, the market gathers in a rough half-circle beneath the walls. Stalls stand under patched awnings. Baskets of onions sit beside bundles of leeks. Smoked fish hang from hooks, stiff and silver-brown, their smell bold enough to introduce itself before the seller speaks. A woman lays out coarse bread on a cloth weighted with stones. A peddler displays pilgrim badges stamped in tin and lead, little images of saints, shells, keys, crosses, and holy places most buyers will never see but may still wish to pin proudly to a hat. No one can quite agree whether every badge truly comes from the shrine it claims, but the peddler smiles like a man who considers doubt merely another item for sale. At the gate table sit the toll-takers. They are not warriors, though their ink-stained fingers may frighten merchants more efficiently than spears. One is a narrow clerk named Martin, with a trimmed beard, a wax tablet, and the chilly patience of someone who has heard every excuse. Beside him sits a broader man called Eid, the weigher, who keeps a set of balances, iron weights, a measuring rod, and a face carefully emptied of pity. A small locked chest rests between them. Osin would approve of the lock. Perhaps he chose it. Perhaps he dreams of it fondly. The work here is a strange kind of gatekeeping, not of bodies but of goods. Wool must be weighed, fish counted, ale barrels checked, salt measured, cloth lengths marked, every cart, basket, bundle, and complaint must pass through custom before entering the castle's hungry orbit. Market tolls feed the lord's purse, maintain roads when anyone remembers roads require maintaining, and remind everyone that in medieval life, even mud may feel taxed if it lies in the wrong place. A woman from the village sets down 2 baskets of eggs wrapped in straw, perhaps the same woman you saw before dawn. Martin counts them with a fingertip, lips moving silently. 1 egg has cracked. The woman says it cracked on the road. Martin says roads do not pay tolls. She says neither do broken eggs, unless he plans to collect from the yolk. Eid laughs once into his sleeve, very softly, as though humour must be measured too. After a little bargaining, the cracked egg is ignored, and the woman enters with the relieved dignity of someone who has defeated government using poultry. A wool merchant arrives next, cheeks red, cloak fine, horse irritated. His bales are tied in rope and sealed with small lead tags. Eid cuts one open just enough to inspect the fleece. He pushes his hand inside, feeling for damp, stones, hidden scraps, anything that might make a bale heavier than honesty allows. Some swear that dishonest sellers sprinkle wool with water before weighing, and others swear weighers keep thumbs heavier than iron. Those who tell the tale never fully agree who cheats more, but everyone at the table watches everyone else as if truth is a mouse likely to bolt. Pilgrim sniffs the wool bale, sneezes, and sits. Tib, leaning near the wall with his sack over one shoulder, says this means no rats. Martin says he's glad the castle now has an official opinion from a dog. Pilgrim accepts the remark without visible injury. Near the ale stall, a brewer's boy rolls a small barrel toward the measuring post. The barrel sloshes. Edie taps it, sniffs the bung, and marks the tally. Ale is never merely ale in a castle town. It is wages, breakfast, trade, warmth, and a reason neighbours forgive one another briefly. A woman known as the ale taster sits nearby with a shallow cup, her expression solemn. She takes a mouthful, waits, considers, then nods. Her duty is to judge whether ale is fit for sale and whether the measure is fair. In some places, they say, alewives who sell sour drink may be fined in Manor Court, or made to sit in public shame if they cheat too boldly. Even now, it is hard to tell whether fear of fines improves ale more than pride, but the brewer's boy looks relieved enough to bless both. You stand near the toll table and feel the whole castle's appetite passing through this narrow place. Salt for cellars, candles promised to shrines, fish for fasting days, oats for horses, wool for cloaks, iron nails in a pouch, dried apples for winter pottage. A pilgrim trades a coin for a badge and asks whether the road through the forest is safe. 3 people answer at once, disagreeing completely. One says wolves, one says thieves, one says the bridge is worse than either. Medieval guidance. You notice often arrives as a bundle of worries tied with string. A little shrine stands beside the gate, tucked into the wall's angle. It holds a painted saint beneath a wooden roof, with a dry sprig of rosemary, 2 candle ends, and a few bent pins left as offerings. Traders touch the shrine before bargaining, not always from holiness. Some say it keeps scales honest, others say it keeps tongues clever. Martin, who seems devoted to neither theory, still glances at it whenever someone swears too grandly by God, mother, or local river. The suspicious Brother Anselm appears near the badge peddler, his cloak wrapped tight around the bundle from Sabine's wax room. He pauses to examine a pilgrim token shaped like a shell, then decides against buying it. Perhaps because monks are supposed to be cautious with coins, or perhaps because he already owns too many signs of holiness to carry comfortably. A washerwoman from the stream points him out with her chin, and the rumour of his hidden bundle travels 3 stalls in less time than it takes Eid to weigh a sack of onions. The market grows louder as latecomers hurry. Coins clink into the chest. The clerk scratches names into wax. Disputes flare and fade. A fishwife accuses a carter of standing on her basket. The carter says the fish were already flat. Nobody finds this comforting. Above, guards on the wall watch with the lazy interest of men who prefer problems to remain below them. From inside the castle comes the smell of evening pottage beginning again, thicker now, carrying onions, peas, and smoke. As the light thins, Martin closes his wax tablet and rubs his eyes. Eid stacks the weights in order, smallest to largest, as carefully as Sabine hanging candles. The locked chest is lifted and carried inward. The market will not vanish at once. People linger, trade gossip, buy one last heel of bread, argue over whether the forest road is safer by moonrise or morning. But the gate begins to narrow its welcome. Goods have been counted, coins gathered, tempers measured, though not always improved. You step back beneath the arch as Pilgrim trots at your heel, tired now, nose dusty from wool and fish baskets. Behind you, the market hum softens into evening murmur. Ahead, the castle yard darkens under smoke and torchlight. Somewhere deeper within the walls, a hammer rings once against metal, then again, slow and bright, like sparks beginning to wake beneath the coming night. The hammer's bright note leads you away from the gate and into the lower yard, where evening has settled in blue folds between the walls. Behind you, the market fades into murmurs, last coins, and wheels creaking toward the road. Ahead, the forge glows like a small red cave beneath a lean-to roof, breathing heat into the cold. Smoke rises through a blackened vent. Sparks leap and vanish. Pilgrim trots beside you until the first hard clang rings out, then wisely slows, as if remembering that bravery is best practiced at a distance from flying iron. The smithy stands near the stables because horses always need something, and near the gate because gates also always need something, and near the yard because every object in a castle eventually breaks there. Inside, an armourer named Berold bends over the anvil, broad shoulders shining with sweat despite the winter air. His beard is singed at the edges, his leather apron is scarred, patched, and stiff from years of sparks. Beside him, 2 younger helpers work the bellows, their faces red in the forge light, pushing air into the coals until the fire blooms orange-white and angry. On the wall hang the castle's quieter bones hinges, nails, hasps, hooks, buckles, horseshoes, spearheads, broken stirrups, pot chains, door straps, and tools waiting for repair. A helmet rests on a bench, dented at the rim from some hard use nobody describes in detail. A mail shirt lies in a heap like a sleeping metal fish. Near the doorway sits the cracked cartwheel from the gate, stripped of its iron tire and looking embarrassed to be seen without proper clothing. 3 men have argued over it all day, but here, at last, the wheel has met someone who intends to do more than point. Berold lifts a glowing rod from the coals with tongs. The heat presses against your face, dry and fierce, so different from kitchen warmth, candle warmth, or the soft breath of laundry steam. This is a sharper comfort, one that smells of charcoal, iron scale, sweat, leather, and burned hoof. He lays the rod on the anvil and strikes. The sound travels up your bones. Hammer, turn, hammer, turn. Each blow seems to shape not only metal but the evening around it. A boy at the bench makes nails, one after another, from thin rods heated red and cut to length. Each nail is headed with quick taps, then dropped into a tray with a tiny ringing sound. It is dull work only to someone who has never needed a roof to stay on, a door to close, or a chest to hold precious salt. Castles eat nails. They swallow them into doors, carts, shutters, floors, saddles, hoardings, barrels, and benches. One careless storm can undo a week's supply. The boy's hands are black with soot, and his expression is the steady emptiness of someone counting past the point where numbers still feel personal. No one can quite agree whether smiths are blessed men or suspicious ones. They work with fire, iron, water, and noise, which are powerful things. Some swear a blacksmith can cure certain charms by heating iron and quenching it in water, then giving the water to the afflicted person or beast. Others say horseshoes hung above a door keep ill luck, witches, and wandering misfortune from entering. Berold says horseshoes mostly keep horses useful. But you notice one nailed above the forge door all the same, curved upward as if catching whatever luck dares fall. Oswin appears briefly with his keyring, delivering a broken lock plate wrapped in cloth. He and Berold exchange few words. Their crafts meet often. One guards doors, the other keeps doors capable of being guarded. Berold studies the lock plate, grunts, and sets it near the fire. Oswin watches the placement with the quiet pain of a man leaving a sick friend in a surgeon's care, then vanishes back into the darkening yard. The helpers draw the bellows again. The coals flare. Berold takes up the iron tire for the cracked wheel, heats one section, hammers it true, and speaks to the wheelwright beside him, a narrow fellow with wood shavings caught in his sleeves. Together they test the curve, heat, hammer, cool, and test again. Even the wheel must be treated as a partnership between wood and iron. Too loose, and it slips. Too tight, and the wheel suffers. Medieval engineering, you think, is mostly patience with objects that refuse to explain themselves politely. Near the back of the smithy, a small trough of water waits for quenching. When hot iron plunges in, steam leaps upward with a hiss like an offended serpent. Pilgrim barks once, then pretends it meant to. The helpers laugh softly. Berold does not. He is listening to the metal. He says iron sings differently when it's right, and though you cannot hear what he hears, you believe him. By now, you have followed enough castle workers to know that every craft has a private language keys. Rushes, dogs, hawks, candles, cloth, locks, grain, and now glowing iron that speaks through hammer and steam. A suit of partial armour rests on a stand nearby, not shining like feast day tales, but dark, scratched, and practical. Straps need replacing. One buckle has snapped. A gauntlet has lost 2 rivets. Berold's apprentice holds the piece steady while he sets new rivets with careful blows. War may be the glory sung in halls, but maintenance is what survives into morning. The most heroic helmet in the world becomes a bowl if its hinge fails. This is the kind of truth minstrels rarely put to music, perhaps because Ode to the Reliable Buckle has limited tavern appeal. The chapel bell rings for evening prayers, its sound softened by walls and smoke. Berold pauses only long enough to lower his hammer and bow his head. Sparks drift upward and fade while the note passes through the forge. Then work resumes. Horses must be shod before dawn. A kitchen pot needs a handle. The gate hinge complains. The repaired wheel must return to its cart. The castle's iron life cannot sleep simply because the sky has darkened. Sabine's candles begin to appear in lanterns along the yard, small pale flames behind horn panes. Their glow joins the forge's red light, and together they make the mud shine like dark glass. You stand near the doorway with your hands out, warmed by fire and tiredness, watching Berold lift, strike, turn, cool, and strike again. Outside, the market road quiets. Inside, the castle settles into night by degrees, and in the lower yard, beneath soot-black beams, the armourer keeps the hinges. Horseshoes, helmets, and humble nails of the whole stone world alive with sparks. The forge's warmth follows you only a few steps before the evening cold reclaims your sleeves. Behind you, Berold's hammer rings again, slower now, each strike bright against the blue-black yard. Sabine's candles glow in horn lanterns along the passage, small imprisoned moons trembling whenever the wind slips under a door. Pilgrim keeps close to your heel, though every hiss from the quenching trough has left him pretending great interest in safer matters, such as mud, straw, and the possibility of dropped supper. A servant girl hurries past carrying a covered bowl, and the smell that trails after her is not kitchen-rich or forge-bitter, but green, sharp, and strange. Rosemary, vinegar, crushed leaves, warm honey, and something earthy you cannot name. She turns down a narrow passage near the chapel, where the stones are smoother from quiet feet and the air cools again. You follow at a respectful distance, drawn by that herbal scent and by a low murmur of voices beyond a half-open door. The infirmary is not grand. It is a long, low room with whitewashed walls, a hearth at one end, and straw mattresses laid on frames beneath wool blankets. A few beeswax candles burn near a small painted saint on a shelf, their light steadier and sweeter than tallow. Dried herbs hang from rafters in bundled sage, betony, yarrow, comfrey, rue, mint, lavender, and others whose names seem to belong half to gardens and half to spells. Near the fire sits a woman called Dame Cecily, the castle's healer, with a linen coif tied beneath her chin and hands stained green from grinding leaves. Beside her, Brother Anselm warms his suspicious bundle near the hearth, looking as if he has always been there and never been anywhere else at all. He has finally opened it, and to your mild disappointment it contains not stolen cheese, not secret relics, but folded cloths, a little waxed pouch of dried herbs, and a small book wrapped against damp. This does not make him less suspicious. It merely makes him suspicious in a scholarly direction. Dame Cecily motions you nearer without looking up. She's mixing a poultice in a mortar, working herbs with honey and a splash of ale until they become a dark paste. A groom sits on a stool nearby, one sleeve rolled up, a shallow scrape along his forearm from a disagreeable harness buckle. He watches the mortar as if it might bite. Cecily tells him the wound is clean enough, then adds that if he faints at the smell of yarrow, she will tell Malkin, and he will never hear the end of it. The groom sits straighter. Medieval courage, you notice, can be summoned by fear of kitchen gossip. On a table near the hearth rests a small earthenware jar filled with leeches, dark and quiet in cloudy water. You try not to stare. Pilgrim stares for both of you, then backs away with excellent judgment. Leeches are kept for drawing blood when a healer believes the body is too hot, too swollen, or troubled by bad humours. No one can quite agree whether every bleeding helps or merely makes the patient paler and easier to manage. But Cecily handles the jar with practised care. She says a leech knows its work better than some physicians she has met, which may be praise for the leech or an insult to the physicians. Across the room, an old soldier lies under a blanket, coughing softly. A cup of warm broth sits beside him, along with a charm tied in red thread, a scrap of parchment marked with a saint's name and folded around a pinch of dried rue. Brother Anselm says a prayer over him, in a voice so soft it nearly becomes part of the fire. Cecily checks the man's forehead with the back of her hand, then places a cloth steeped in vinegar and herbs near his pillow to freshen the air. Some swear sickness travels in foul vapours that creep like invisible smoke, and even now it is hard to tell whether the vinegar keeps illness away or simply makes the room feel less afraid. You help by holding a candle while Cecily binds the groom's arm with clean linen. Clean, in this place, means boiled, dried, and guarded from unnecessary fingers, which already feels like a miracle after the day you've seen. The linen likely passed through a loon's cracked hands at the stream, through lye, frost, and steam, and now returns as quiet protection around someone else's skin. The castle's labours keep meeting one another in small circles. Ash from the kitchen helps what? Wax from Sabine lights Cecily's work. Linen from the laundry becomes bandage. Ale from the buttery becomes medicine, courage, and sometimes the reason medicine is needed. Near the painted saint, a bowl of water holds a few pins, bent and dark. Cecily explains that women sometimes leave pins, threads, or little scraps of cloth at shrines when asking healing for sore eyes, aching joints, fevered children, or hearts that refuse sense. Brother Anselm says such offerings are best made with humility. Cecily says humility is good, but so is not standing in wet shoes. Between them, theology and practical nursing reach a peaceful truce. The room settles into its own rhythm. The old soldier breathes. The groom tests his bandaged arm and looks surprised to still possess it. A kitchen maid comes in complaining of a burn, and Cecily smooths a salve of fat, beeswax, and marigold over the reddened place. A child from the laundry brings a packet of dried lavender, payment for last month's cough syrup. The half-burned candle beside the St. gutters, then steadies. And you think of Sabine saving every stub because darkness is too large a thing to feed wastefully. Brother Anselm opens his little book, but the light is poor, and he holds it so close to his face that Cecily tells him he will ruin his eyes trying to save everyone else's. He smiles, not offended, and reads a short blessing over the herb jars, the leeches, the blankets, the fire, and all foolish bodies that insist on needing care. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether blessings make medicine stronger, but no one in the room objects to having both. Outside, Beryl's hammer slows, the market has faded, the hall will soon fill with supper smells, voices, trenchers, and fresh rushes doing their brave best beneath boots. Here, though, the castle is quieter, pain is lowered to murmurs, fear is wrapped in wool. Remedies simmer at the edge of belief and common sense. You sit near the infirmary hearth, hands open to the fire, while Pilgrim curls safely beneath the table, and the green scent of herbs rises into the rafters like a soft, uncertain prayer. The green scent of Cecily's herbs follows you out of the infirmary like a quiet blessing caught in your cloak, behind you. Brother Anselm's low voice continues over the old soldier's bed, mingling with the crackle of the hearth and the tiny restless sounds of bodies trying to mend. Pilgrim hesitates at the door, glances back toward the warmth beneath the table, and then chooses you with visible reluctance. This is touching, though not flattering. The dog has the look of one who has decided that loyalty is important, but blankets are also important, and history has placed him in a difficult position. The passage beyond the infirmary bends toward the inner range, where the castle grows less smoky and more watchful. The stones here are better fitted, the doors are thicker, the draughts remain, of course, because medieval buildings consider draughts part of their personality. A tallow candle burns in an iron bracket, its flame bending each time the wind sighs beneath a shutter. Farther ahead, beyond an oak door darkened by years of hands, you hear scratching, not rats this time. Not Pilgrim's secret profession, but the dry, patient rasp of quills on parchment. Oswin appears at the corner as though locks have whispered your arrival. He carries a small lantern and one of his larger keys. Without speaking, he unlocks the oak door and pushes it open. Warmth, wax, ink, and old wool breathe out. Then he steps aside, allowing you into the chamber where the castle remembers itself. It is smaller than the hall, quieter than the chapel, and more dangerous than it first appears. Along one wall stand shelves holding rolled parchments, tied bundles of accounts, wooden tally sticks, wax tablets, and little cloth bags sealed with cord. A long table runs beneath the narrow window, though the window is already black with evening. Several candles burn there, guarded by horn screens to keep draughts from stealing both flame and patience. At the table sit 3 clerks, shoulders rounded, fingers stained, each bent over his work with the grave misery of men paid to make nobody happy in beautiful handwriting. The chief clerk is called Master Aldred. His beard is clipped short, his eyes are tired, and his hands are surprisingly delicate. He holds a quill trimmed to a fine point, dipping it into ink made from oak galls, iron salts, and patience. The ink looks black in the pot, brown where it dries, and permanent in the way debts feel permanent. He does not look up at once. He finishes a line, sands it lightly, taps the extra grains away, and only then studies you as if deciding which column you belong in. You stand near the wall, careful not to breathe too hard on anything that might cost more than your boots. Pilgrim sniffs a basket of parchment scraps and is gently, firmly redirected by a younger clerk who clearly fears dog hair less than Master Aldred's disappointment. Here the castle's strange jobs become marks. Malkin's kitchen receives so many loaves, so much fish, so much salt. Ilune's laundry accounts for linen issued and linen returned. Because cloth has a habit of wandering into private lives, Berold is owed for nails, rivets, hinges, and the iron tire of the cracked wheel. Tib receives payment for rats taken in granary and buttery, though no one can quite agree whether a rat should be paid by the head, the tail, or the terror prevented. What's work is Mark II, in a line written smaller than others, perhaps because even ink prefers not to linger. Aldred shows you a tally stick split lengthwise, notched across both halves. One half belongs to the castle, the other to the person owing or owed. The matching notches prove the amount, unless fire, damp, rats, fraud, or human memory interfere, which is to say, unless life happens. Some swear that a tally stick burned in anger can call misfortune upon both debtor and creditor. Aldred says burning accounts is a poor remedy, unless one wishes to be hanged by arithmetic. Still, he keeps the sticks dry and away from foolish candles. At the far end of the table, a seal-keeper warms a lump of red wax over a small flame. He presses a bronze matrix into it, leaving the Lord's mark sharp and proud. Seals close orders, confirm rents, grant permission, demand supplies, and sometimes make ordinary words heavy enough to travel. A messenger waits nearby, perhaps the same boy from before dawn, now less frightened and more tired. He holds a folded parchment sealed with fresh wax, his earlier bread long since eaten. The seal-keeper warns him not to tuck it near his skin while riding, lest the wax soften. A message with a ruined seal becomes merely gossip with ambitions. In one corner, Brother Anselm has somehow arrived before you, or perhaps monks multiply in dim corridors when given enough candles. He sits with Aldred over a small book, comparing a note from the monastery guest house with the castle's record of candles promised, candles delivered, and candles still owed. Sabine's work has become numbers. Brother Anselm insists the shrine by the forest road received fewer candles than agreed. Aldred says the road shrine also received 2 rushlights, which count if no one is being dramatic. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether this dispute is about holiness, winter darkness, or monks who enjoy winning. The room smells of beeswax, tallow, ink, scraped parchment, and damp wool steaming gently near the hearth. A clerk sharpens quills with a penknife, keeping the cut feathers in a little bundle because even scraps may serve to clean nibs. Another rubs a parchment sheet with pumice to smooth it. Parchment is too costly for careless words. Mistakes are scraped away with a knife, though the ghost of the error often remains if light catches it. You think of all the things in this castle that are covered over but not gone, stains beneath rushes, rumours beneath courtesy, debts beneath seals, hunger beneath winter stores. Aldred reads from a Manor Court note written earlier in the week a fine for selling short measure ale, another for a fence left unrepaired, one complaint about geese trespassing in a barley strip, and a dispute over whether a widow's pig was stolen or simply more ambitious than expected. The clerks write these small dramas with the same care a chronicler might give a king's death. In truth, a pig at the wrong time can disturb village peace more efficiently than distant royalty. Even now, it's hard to tell whether this chamber keeps order or merely records disorder in tidy columns. Yet the work matters. Without these ledgers, grain vanishes, rents blur, favours curdle into quarrels, and every servant's labour floats away like smoke. Ink fixes the castle to itself. It remembers who brought onions, who owed nails, who borrowed linen, who broke the cartwheel, who paid toll, who did not, and which monk still looks suspicious beside a bundle of perfectly innocent candles. At last, Aldred sprinkles sand over the final wet line, waits, then closes the ledger with both hands. The sound is soft, but it feels like a door shutting. Oswin steps forward to lock the document chest. The key turns, wax cools, candles shorten. Outside, the hall fills with supper voices, and the bell prepares to mark another hour. You leave the chamber with Pilgrim close beside you, carrying the odd comfort that even in a castle of smoke, mud, hunger, and rumour, someone is awake enough to write it all down. The soft closing of Aldred's ledger seems to follow you into the passage, as though the castle has just tucked part of itself away for the night. Behind the locked chest, debts, tolls, rats, candles, cracked wheels, suspicious monks, and wandering pigs lie pressed into ink, unable for the moment to cause further trouble. Pilgrim pads beside you, nose low, tail tired. His day's pilgrim road having led through more professions than any sensible dog should be expected to respect. Ahead, the corridor rises by a narrow stair where the air grows colder, cleaner, and threaded with wind. You climb because the bell has been calling you all day. It began before dawn, one tired note over river mist and mud. It answered the monastery across the valley. It softened over Watt's work, rang through Sabine's wax room, paused Beryl's hammer, and measured the quiet of Cecily's infirmary. Now, as evening deepens into night, you follow its hidden rope upward toward the chapel tower, where time is not written in ledgers but shaken into the air. The stair curls inside the wall, steep and narrow, worn at the centre by generations of feet. A candle burns in a small niche halfway up, its flame bent sideways by a draught that slips through the stone like a whisper with cold hands. The steps are uneven enough to suggest that the mason responsible either had strong faith or poor knees. Pilgrim begins bravely, then stops after the 10th stair and looks back down with sudden spiritual maturity. You tell him softly that he may guard the lower landing. He accepts this promotion and sits with great dignity. At the top, you emerge into the bell chamber, and the wind meets you first. It pushes through louvered openings, smelling of frost, smoke, distant fields, and night settling over the road. The chamber is not large, but it feels high above everything. Dark beams cross overhead. Ropes hang from the bells into the ringing space below. A lantern glows on a hook, its horn pane clouded with soot. Near it stands the bell ringer, a lean old woman named Maud, wrapped in a wool cloak. Her hands hardened by rope and weather. You expected perhaps a burly man. Maud notices this before you speak and smiles in a way that suggests she has disappointed expectations professionally for many years. Beside her is a younger ringer, Will, with a cap pulled low and a face pink from cold. He rubs his palms with a bit of fat to keep the rope from tearing his skin. Maud tells him not to overdo it, unless he wants his hands slipping at Compline, and the whole castle thinking Judgment Day has arrived early. Some swear that bells drive away storms, demons, fever, wolves, and bad luck. No one can quite agree how much responsibility a bell should carry. But Maud says people blame the bell when it fails and forget it when it helps, which seems to be the common fate of useful things. The great bell hangs above you, dark and still, its bronze body dull in the lantern light. Smaller bells hang near it for lesser calls. Each has a voice. Maud knows them the way Oswin knows locks and Malkin knows fire. One calls to prayer, one marks meals, one summons servants, one warns the gate, one tolls for death, one rings when strangers of rank approach, so the household may look prepared rather than as confused as it usually is. The bells are the castle's throat, and Maud is the careful hand at its voice. She shows you the ropes, thick with use, smoothed where palms have pulled year after year. The ends are wrapped in worn leather. A small knot marks one line where a younger ringer once miscounted strokes and rang for dinner during a funeral vigil. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the mourners were offended, grateful, or simply hungry. Maud says the household came very quickly, so perhaps grief and appetite made peace that evening. Through the wooden slats, you look out over the castle, below. The great hall glows with firelight beneath smoke-dark rafters. Fresh rushes hide the stone, and voices rise gently, softened by supper. The kitchen chimney pours a steady plume into the cold. The forge is dimmer now, though one red pulse still shows where Beryl tends coals for morning. The market road lies nearly empty, rutted and pale under a thin moon. Near the gate, the repaired cart waits with its wheel set back in place, looking smug about surviving public debate. Beyond the wall, the monastery roofs sit low against the valley, and farther still, village windows glimmer like embers dropped in the dark. Maud takes the prayer rope and nods to Will. Together they pull. The bell swings, slow at first, then fuller, until bronze opens its chest and sends sound pouring outward. It is not merely heard, it enters your ribs, your teeth, the soles of your feet. The tower trembles. The wind seems to pause around it. Down below, people lift their heads without thinking. A clerk pauses over sanded ink. A laundress folds linen. A guard on the wall shifts his spear. A sick man hears it under his blanket. Somewhere, perhaps, Brother Anselm looks more innocent than he deserves. The ringing marks the hour for prayer, but also for order. In a world without clocks in every room, bells gather the scattered day and tie it into shared moments. Work begins by bells, rests by bells, eats by bells, prays by bells, sleeps uneasily by bells. Monastery bells beyond the valley answer with their own slower voice, and for a breath the castle and abbey seem to speak across fields, road, river mist, and winter darkness. Maud lets the rope rise and fall through her hands. Will counts under his breath. The last note rolls outward, thinning over the walls until it becomes part of the night. Maud listens to its fading as carefully as Beryl listened to hot iron. She says a cracked bell sounds sick before it breaks, and a wise ringer hears trouble early. Even now, it is hard to tell whether she means bronze, weather, or people. When the chamber grows still again, the cold returns. Maud covers the lantern with one hand to shield it from the draught. She tells you bells are rung in storms to break the anger of the sky, though lightning has little respect for tradition. She tells you that when someone dies, each toll lets the living count loss without speaking. She tells you that when fog lies thick along the road, a bell can guide a late traveller home, unless the traveller is a fool. In which case it can only provide musical accompaniment to foolishness. You descend the stair slowly, carrying the bell's hum inside your bones. Pilgrim rises from the landing as if he has personally defended it against shadows. Below, the passage is warmer, lit by Sabine's candles and scented faintly with supper, smoke, damp wool, and herbs. The castle has heard the hour. Doors begin to close. Feet turn toward hearths. Above you, Maud waits with her ropes and wind, ready to give the stone world its final measures before sleep. You come down from the bell tower with the last bronze note still resting in your bones, soft and deep, like a sound remembered by stone. Pilgrim trots ahead of you along the passage, satisfied with his defence of the lower landing, though the shadows appear to have offered little resistance. Sabine's candles burn low behind horn panes. Their flames lean whenever a draught slips under a door, then straighten again with the small stubbornness of useful things. The castle is not asleep yet, but it has begun turning towards sleep, the way a tired animal folds its legs beneath itself. In the great hall, supper has thinned to murmurs. Fresh rushes lie crushed now under many boots, still breathing faint herbs beneath the stronger scents of ale. Pottage, smoke, wool, and tired bodies. Trenchers are stacked near a side table. A half-burned beeswax candle has guttered into a soft golden pool, waiting to be saved by someone who knows its worth. Avis moves through the room with one of her younger maids, gathering what can be reused, covered, fed to dogs, or kept from rats. Pilgrim watches the trenchers with the devotional focus of Brother Anselm before a shrine. Avis gives him a hard crust, and he accepts it as if receiving absolution. Near the hearth, men-at-arms sit with cloaks drawn close, warming their hands before taking their turns along the wall. Their mail hangs loose at their shoulders, their faces shine with firelight and weariness. One is mending a leather strap. Another rubs goose grease into cracked knuckles, muttering that St. Cuthbert owes him better weather after all these years of attention. No one can quite agree whether saints keep accounts as carefully as Master Aldred, but the man rubs anyway. And no one mocks him too sharply. Night makes even jokes softer. You follow the watch captain, a square woman named Marion, toward the gatehouse. Her lantern swings from her hand, painting the passage stones with tired amber. She carries no grand sword, only a short blade, a heavy cloak, and a ring of small checks in her memory shutters, bolts, postern, woolwalk, brazier, horn, water bucket, spare torch, sleeping guards, wakeful guards, suspicious noises, ordinary noises pretending to be suspicious. Her job is not to seek glory. It is to notice before noticing is too late. At the gate, the great oak doors are already closed. Oswin stands with the porter, testing the inner bar where it rests in iron brackets. The wood is thick, dark, and cold beneath their hands. The repaired cart waits beyond the arch, now safely inside the lower yard, its once cracked wheel bound tight with Beryl's iron. It seems proud, which is unreasonable for a wheel, though after today perhaps it has earned a little vanity. The porter lowers the last shutter, leaving only a narrow watching slit toward the road. Outside, the market is gone. Only ruts, straw, and the scent of trampled fish remain. The little shrine beside the gate holds 2 candle ends and a bent pin. Someone has left a sprig of rue there since afternoon, perhaps against bad bargains, bad weather, or the sort of bad luck that arrives after dark carrying a sack. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether gate shrines protect travellers or simply remind them to be afraid politely. But Marion touches the wooden roof with 2 fingers as she passes. The watchmen climb to the wall walk, and you climb with them. The night air opens wide above the yard, cold enough to make every breath visible. Below, the castle glows in pockets, kitchen embers, infirmary candle, hall hearth, a forge coal kept alive for morning, the chapel lamp before the uncertain relic no one wholly trusts but everyone respects after dark. Beyond the walls, the road lies pale under moon and mist. The forest edge is a black seam, far off. The monastery bell answers nothing now. It has given the day away and fallen quiet. Marion sets one guard over the gate, one near the postern, one along the outer angle where stones gather frost first. They walk slowly, not because they are lazy, but because haste misses things. A broken latch, a low lantern, a fox in the ditch, a shape on the road, a loose tile that will become a leak by morning and a complaint by noon. The castle at night belongs to watchers, dogs, rats, sleepers, prayers, and draughts. Pilgrim curls near the gatehouse brazier when you return below, choosing warmth over duty with touching honesty. Tib the rat-catcher sits there too, waiting for the darker hours when granary teeth begin their secret work. He has set one trap already and keeps another in his lap, baited and patient. He says rats are boldest when men snore. Marion says men are boldest when rats are not discussed before bed. This is the final humour of the day, and it settles gently, like ash. A messenger knocks once at the inner door, late and cold, but he carries no seal urgent enough to open the main gate. The porter speaks through the slit, hears his story, and sends him to the outer shelter with a blanket and a promise of entry at dawn. Harsh, perhaps, but not cruel. Castles must survive kindness in measured portions. Too much mercy with bolts and bars can become trouble for everyone under the roof. Slowly. Doors are barred. Lanterns are trimmed. The hall sinks lower around its embers. In the infirmary, Dame Cecily checks the old soldier and lays another wool blanket over his feet. In the wax room, Sabine's candles cool in the dark. In the clerk's chamber, Aldred's ledger sleeps under lock, holding the day's quarrels flat and quiet. Oswin makes one last round, keys whispering, and when he passes you, he nods as if you too are now one of the small moving parts by which the castle remains itself. You sit at last near the gatehouse fire, your boots drying stiffly, your cloak smelling of smoke, wet wool, herbs, iron, and river frost. Pilgrim presses against your ankle, warm and heavy. Above, Marion's steps pass slowly over the wall. The stars are hidden behind cloud. The road waits. The castle listens. All its strange workers, praised or ignored, clean or sooty, fragrant or not at all fragrant, have carried the day into night. And now the night grows softer. The brazier settles into a red heart beneath grey ash. The porter leans back against the wall, eyes half closed, still listening. The last candle near the stair bends, steadies, and burns with a small golden patience. You feel the cold stone behind you, the warm dog at your feet, the slow breathing of sleepers beyond the doors, and the far-off hush of fields under frost. The castle no longer seems like a fortress raised against the world. It seems like a lantern cupped in two hands. Around it lie ditch, road, hedge, forest, and the long dark miles where travellers move carefully from shrine to shrine, watching for the next glow. Inside, there is bread cooling beneath cloth, linen drying near rafters, herbs hanging in bundles, iron resting by the forge, keys on Oswin's belt, and bells waiting above the wind. You do not need to follow every sound now. Let the small noises loosen. Let the watchman's footstep pass and fade. Let the last ember brighten, dim, and brighten once more. Somewhere in the hall, rushes sigh beneath a turning sleeper. Somewhere near the chapel, wax falls silently down a candle's side. Somewhere beyond the wall, the repaired cartwheel stands still at last, finished with its troubles for one night. You rest deeper into the warmth. The medieval world keeps turning without asking more from you. Gates hold, dogs dream, bells sleep, the road is quiet, the dark is wide, but the fire is near, and for this one soft moment, beneath stone and smoke and old winter clouds, you are safe enough to close your eyes.